Um, but this man needs no introduction. Well, actually, let me introduce him. I hadn't had him all this year.
It's true. Been a
Welcome,
while.
John Crumpler, leading analyst for the Texans Wire. John, welcome back, man. I love you, buddy. How you been?
Ruben, it's good to be back, man. I've been good. The New Year's keeping me busy at the hospital, but let me tell you, the Texans have not disappointed. I feel
At
like they're
all.
checking all the boxes so far this offseason.
This offseason, how do you feel about Demeco Ryans, man? Because the reaction so far has just been off the charts.
I mean, I think he's a perfect hire for what this team needs right now. I think he's a young head coach that's going to grow with the players. He comes in that's a proven commodity. The Pro Football Writers Association Assistant Head Coach of the Year, someone who's going to come in, get the best out of Jalen Petrie, out of Stingley, out of Harris. Someone when you look at all the Texans draft capital and he's going to go make those guys better. I think it's someone who other coaches are going to want to come work for. I think it's someone who
Hmm.
free agents are going to say, that guy can make my career better. For a franchise that hasn't had a lot of feel good moments the last 2 years,
Yeah.
really very few, I would say. This is a huge win to get Demeco Ryans a homecoming for the best head coaching candidate on the market. And he's a Texan again. So
Yeah,
I
and
think it's wonderful, man.
what I think was interesting is how the Texans presented themselves to Demeco Ryans that day. They put out all the stops. There was posters of his greatest highlights. Every single TV had a welcome Demeco Ryans banner, and it's like it finally feels like the Houston Texans are kind of getting back on track of being a respectable franchise. Right, the past 2 years it's been nothing but a slippery slope. How do you feel about ownership, John? Because in my opinion, I am starting to like Cal Shiesty. I'm starting to love that Hannah McNair is much more involved. Well, I haven't talked about it, or pretty much not really. A lot of people have talked about Hannah being much more involved this off season, this coaching search, and it seems like we are kind of getting right back on track.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cal McNair is turning into the prototype that you want for an NFL owner. I think there are bad owners and there are good owners, and there's a
Hmm.
lot in between. And for now, I think Cal is transitioning into the in between.
Yeah.
Obviously, he took over this from his dad. And I think there was a transition phase for him where he was learning. He wants to trust people, but I think there might have been a phase where the wrong people were trusted.
Hmm.
I think him firing Jack Easterby was a
It's
huge
huge.
step forward in saying, this is my franchise, and I understand that we're not doing things the way that business is supposed to be run in the NFL. And I think really putting out all the stops to make sure that you can hire a Demeco Ryans when that guy had options, when he turned down Walmart money, he turned down the
Yep.
legacy franchise in Denver, and you did everything possible to make sure you got him. And, he also kind of checked Nick Caserio, someone
Mm.
who I think he was always very fond of, who he rushed to hire when the general manager opening became available. And he said, we're going to do our GM search a little differently this year. I mean, my bad, our head coach search. And it
Mm.
worked out wonderfully for them. So for Cal McNair, what I'm starting to see is an owner who wants to hire the right people, wants to trust the right people, will cut a big check, and will get out of the way. And really, that's what you want in the NFL. You want let football people do football and give them the tools that they need. And so I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing from Cal McNair.
Oh, absolutely, man. Then the players are excited, right? You heard Tunsil, who was at the Pro Bowl recently, just talk, good things about Coach Ryan's, and basically, asking like, "I'm ready to play football. Let's go ahead and get it." The fans' reactions, John, you, Harley, me, and Cody, Pat, we do a great job of hosting spaces. But we've been hosting spaces damn near every single day. That's the amount of excitement that has been coming from this fan base, and it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, the Texans are finally putting a product forward that's believable. And when
Mm.
you can believe that something will work, which I do not think has been the case with the Lovie Smith Texans, we
Mm.
tried. For me, believing it was work was I said they'd win 5 games. For the David Coley Texans, it was just a mess. But when
Yeah.
you see Demeco Ryans, when you see the young pieces, when you see a second overall draft pick that by all means should return a franchise quarterback, it's easy to believe in the team again. And then it's easy to
Mhm.
get excited and to allow yourself to care again. And I think that's exactly what the Houston Texans franchise needed. And I don't blame fans for feeling how they feel. This is an exciting time.
Exciting time, and I think Nick Casario is relieved that Demeco Ryans is here. I'm not sure if you caught this, but he kind of gave a foreshadowing moment between him and, general manager Nick Casario. He talked about last year when it was the sixth round in the draft and he wanted a linebacker, but everyone else wanted the running back Elijah Mitchell. I want this guy. Front office wants this guy. We don't agree, however, working together, and they came up not to get Demeco Ryan's guy. It was Elijah Mitchell, kind of foreshadowing the potential head coach GM battle. But he said at the end of the day, there's no egos. It is about the Houston Texans. And Nick Casario, what did he say right after? Amen.
Yeah, and I mean, I really thought that was a lovely anecdote as to who
Mm.
Ryans wants to be. It's someone who wants to be involved with
Yeah.
assembling the 90-man roster, of assembling the 53-man roster. He's going to have input, he's going to have opinions, and he's going to make sure those are heard. But I love that from him because he talked about there are two linebackers on the board he really liked. And he's like, I played linebacker. I love me some backers, but the team needed a running back.
Yeah.
And he recognized that. And it's the kind of maturity that you want for your future head coach. It's the kind of guy that you trust. Okay, Nick Casario has 20 years of experience in evaluating
Mm.
talent. You're going to let him do that job. And it gives me hope that it's going to be a collaborative process and not a tense one. Because I think that Demeco is going to need Casario's eye for talent to get to where he wants to be. And
Absolutely.
Casario is going to need Demeco Ryan's player development to get where they want the team to be. Really, this doesn't happen without them both being great at their
Mhm.
jobs. So, yeah, that was a lovely moment at the press conference, and I thought that kind of shows that this thing can work.
I know, absolutely. And then you brought up player development. I am excited for this young core of the Houston Texans right now. The young core I consider Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, Kenyon Green, Christian Harris, Damian Pierce, Nico Collins, maybe,
We'll
you
see.
know,
He's got
we
another
will
year to show it.
see, right? But we know that one special thing about Demeco Ryans over there in San Fran that he was able to develop talent, right? Fred Warner, who is one of the best linebackers right now in the NFL, was a third round pick, right? And he spoke to that. Another part that I liked, right, was he talked about Fred Warner being married. And that doesn't matter at all in the NFL. But for a coach to care that about you, man, it means that he really does care about a man, right? And that's something that he talked about with Gary Kubiak. And Kubiak was on 6'10, and he was like, the first thing we discussed is how to treat players like players. And I think it's when you're gonna feed off of this young core, man. And what we were wanted to see last year was development, and I just think it's only gonna come a year later.
Yeah, I think that Ryans is the perfect head coach to bring a lot of those guys around. I mean, it was really fun in the press conference. Fans got excited. He's talking
Hmm.
about Derek Stingley. He says someone they scouted in San Francisco is going to put him in a position to make plays. And we're like, yes,
Yes.
thank you. Please let him man up against these great receivers. We know he can do it. We watched it. He just needs more opportunity. For a guy like Jalen Petrie, when you I loved. I really didn't expect the level in the introductory press conference that they would go into
Mm.
just directly comparing things that happened in San Francisco and how that was encouraging what they could get from Demeco because they talked about Fred Warner. They talked about Hufanga, the all pro safety.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to look at, hey, we've got this really athletic linebacker, Christian Harris, who needs a little coaching. We've got this really talented young safety who wasn't put in good positions last year. And it kind of makes you think, okay, Demeco, what are you going to get out of these guys? And you've got a bunch of picks too. I think, are guys like Thomas Booker, guys like Roy Lopez going to take that step forward? And then we'll have to see who they hired offensive coordinator. But I really don't think it get much worse than the scheme that we saw last year. It definitely can't
No.
get worse than even if I like schematically how they tried to run the ball at times. I don't think the play calling can get worse. So I'm
Mm.
excited to see how those offensive guys will take a step forward, and that's going to be even easier, I think, with a new quarterback. So just so many reasons to expect that this team can take step forwards that do not just have to happen by adding new players. Your current players are going to get better with this coach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's something that most fans are excited for. Before I let you go, John, there is a question that I brought up earlier today, and that was the possibility of a Davis Mills year three. Now, Matt Miller put out the mock draft today on ESPN and also said that another head scout says that he doesn't see the Houston Texans taking a quarterback in this draft. Now, you've been one of the biggest and one of the first Bryce Young people to the Houston Texans. You said it last year here on this channel. How do you feel about the
About
uncertainty at the QB position?
I mean, I frankly don't believe there's a lot of uncertainty beyond the only certainty is that it's not going to be Davis Mills. I think that
Mm,
Houston, Demeco Ryans has said he's been asked about it 3 times. He says we have a quarterback on the roster. He does not name him by name. He's
nope.
not complimentary of him. He does not say anything about him at all. He just says we will be adding to that position. So the question is just who's going to be the starter next year, because you cannot enter 2023 as much as there's a delusional portion of Texans Twitter that would love to tell you Davis Mills is going to be that guy. And I love Davis Mills as a person. I got to meet him this summer. I had a great interview with him.
Yeah, you went to his camp.
Good guy. I'm sorry.
Like, you went to his camp, right?
Yeah, he did his quarterback camp here in Georgia, and I got to go out there and just kind of get to meet him, get to talk to him about why he was doing it, about how his summer had gone. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of talent. I mean, you put on those highlights and you do say that's an NFL quarterback, but the matter of fact is that it was too inconsistent last year, even for the bad circumstances. And when you're trying to project a ceiling, I don't think there's a lot there that you're waiting for. There's no elite arm talent that you're waiting to manifest. There's no elite mobility that you're saying, oh, can he take advantage of this? And then there's some quarterbacks in this draft that are really special. I think Bryce Young's play extension and the way that he navigates a pocket in today's league, that's the stuff that wins a lot of games. That's how the really elite guys right now, they're not just winning with big arms. They're winning by they extend the plays and they find people. And Bryce Young does that all day. I think C.J. Stroud wins with pinpoint accuracy. I think Anthony Richardson, even though he's raw, that's a guy you
Dynamic.
can conceivably say, hey, we're just going to create an offense around his legs for a year or two, like they're doing with Justin Fields right now in Chicago. And we're going to assume that his arm mechanics and the accuracy are going to come as the game slows down for him. So I don't think there's there is some uncertainty at the quarterback position, but I think it's a good uncertainty that we know Houston will upgrade from the year before. It's just a question of how they want to attack that. And I would fully expect the team to attack that in the draft. I read that article from Matt Miller as well. I find it funny that he said that while mocking a quarterback to Houston. So clearly.
And which quarterback was it?
And he mocked Will Levis of all people.
Oh, my God.
I mean, I'll say it on this channel. I'm not going to put it out there publicly yet. I don't see that really fitting Nick Caserio's profile. I don't think Will Levis had the level of success that we've seen. If we look at his 2 top picks last year, even his first 4 picks, John Mechie, Jalen Petrie, Kenyon Green, Derek Stingley,
SEC guys.
all SEC first team guys, they're all Americans, 3 of them at one point in time. I don't think Will Levis was consistent enough or successful enough at the college level to really fit that mold. I think he's a bit of a project. I do think that Bryce Young is going to check a lot of boxes for this organization. It's just, can you get over the fact that he's probably going to come in? I think he'll come in
5'9",
5'10 and a half. He's going to, he's going to be eating 3,000 calories a day leading up to the draft. So maybe he comes in at 195 at the combine, but you kind of know in the back of your head, okay, Bryce Young's playing weight, probably closer 185, 190. But I have a feeling that when you put on the tape, he's just a special.
There's no question.
So it will not surprise me at all if that's what Houston ends up. And the unpopular opinion might be I won't be surprised at all as the draft process kind of unfolds and Jalen Carter and Will Anderson are 2 really special players in this draft. If Chicago says we like one of them a lot and we're not willing to not get that guy, if Chicago ends up trading it with Houston for a pretty reasonable cost.
Yeah, no, it's just exciting to see. And John is one of the best people for talking about the draft. Whenever we get the OC, it might be Bobby Sloak, like you said. Whenever we get the DC, then we can start talking about the draft, something that I am excited for. John, where can the people find you? Because honestly, man, you're one of the top voices for the Houston Texans. Young one at that, man. Thank you, bro. You're representing a lot of us, dude.
Hey, you're working hard. We're all doing our best to cover this team. I love how the city's stepped up to cover the Texans, especially as national coverage. You've kind of watched that fade away. Like, come on, The Athletic. Where's your Texans writer? You guys should follow me at John H. Crumpler on Twitter. Give go ahead and look at the Texans Wire from USA Today. All my articles are there. I dropped a mock draft today that
Yes, he
had two
did.
trades, tried to emulate how Caserio likes to do it. I went back and then I went forward for one of the guys. So I thought it was a pretty good mock. Go check it out.
Absolutely. And as always, guys, let us know how you feel about the video. Me and John came back and killed it. It will happen soon. As always, guys, go Texans. Brighter days are ahead. You guys have a very blessed day.
Go Texans.